But let me start at 24 because, bro, you've got like this massive comic book collection. You're always throwing down just, I mean, everything 2 ways to Sunday. I'm loving it. Give some folks some advice a little bit because to have that kind of collection, you've been doing stuff for so long that what do they do? How do they, what are some of your advice on getting comics in 2023 and you know, not blowing the bank and getting knowing what they're getting, not getting duped by people just, you know, throwing them crap, you know? What's some of your advice, man?
Well, I mean, for me, it was a little trial and error, you know, but I realized, like, I've been collecting comic books since I was a kid, and my my older brother, he was the one that got me into, you know, like the first things that I can read, I can kind of like look back and remember when it comes to anything in my life. Let's say just the earliest thing I could ever remember would have to be the Super Friends, Batman and Robin, like the actual TV show from '66. And between that and Star Wars, Disney, The Black Hole, Mary Poppins, yeah, Star Wars. Yeah, actually, those have to be like the first handful of things that ring to my mind when I think of the first things that I could ever remember from anything. So it's like, you know, I learned my concept of good and evil from comic books before I learned it from Bible or anything else.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like, you know, a lot of people would say, you know, they understood the concept of good and evil with, you know, the good Lord and the devil and everything, you know, from the Bible. It was superheroes. It was Batman fighting the Joker. Joker was doing bad shit. Batman's the good guy to take him down, you know, along with the help of Robin, you know. So it's like my concept of good and bad came from, you know, when I seen Luke Skywalker, you know, going against Darth Vader, you know, and Superman trying to save the world from Lex Luthor or something, you know, it was always like superhero, you know, movie related, comic book related. And then, you know, the Bible came after, you know, not no disrespect, but, you know,
no, is it cool to learn? Is it cool to learn how much inspiration like religion and spirituality had on pop culture, like especially something like Star Wars, where he's literally just going through interesting archetypes and spiritual lore, and you know, obviously, you know, a lot more Eastern religions than necessarily Christianity directly, but things like that. Is it kind of cool to see it after that? Because for me, getting more serious about my faith as I've gotten old, you know, kind of older. I mean, I was in church and stuff when I was a kid, but you go through peaks and valleys with that in a lot of ways. And for me as an adult, it's been like, oh wow, there are like really, really deep archetypes. And a lot of times that's the stuff that like has legs and lasts. It's like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was you know, it was just like say it was, you know, having an older brother to kind of that knew what was all the cool stuff that was going on helped, you know, when it came to what kind of gifts we were getting for Christmas. You know, we were getting the Mego Batman and Robins, and, you know, the Hulk, and just, it was just crazy just to, you know, had that kind of influence along with music and everything else. So it was cool. And from there started collecting comic books. And by the time started collecting comic books were at 75 cents at that point.
Okay.
So we're talking easily early 80s. And I remember like some of the first comic books we actually got a hold of were actually, you know, Batman and, you know, Detective Comics. For some reason, Batman was always cooler than Superman. And you know, but it was, you know, we all, you know, we loved Superman and we had his toy and everything. But when it came to, we had to, you know, pick a comic book and we had to choose, Batman would always, you know, plus that was, you know, my brother's favorite. So I couldn't tell him anything. Shit, you know how that goes. So yeah, it was just, you know,
I got you. I feel the same way, man. I've told people, I said 50% of my collection is probably Batman, and everything else was the other 50%. Like, just literally, Batman was just so much more. It was the gateway, obviously the '89 movie,
Right.
was my gateway into becoming like the serious collector, you know, a serious reader, serious collector. Cause I had a
Right.
couple things and I was into it as a little kid, but like, oh, I'm like hardcore and never went back was because of the 89 movie. So Roman asks, are you buying anything right now in 2023? It doesn't
Actually,
even have to be modern comics, just in general. Like what are you interested in getting? Do you have like a
well,
buy list or kind of
well, I
thing?
mean, I've. It's funny. I've said this back on Wednesday on the comic book roundtable. I was telling them how I've actually picked up a recent comic. It was just Society of America #1, and they came out with a new series, and I picked up the variant cover, which has Alan Scott, Green Lantern, on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a mustache and a beard and a goatee, like the whole, you know, how Reed Richards has like the mustache and all that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those.
He's got like
And
the
I'm
evil
looking at,
Spock look, man.
yeah, I'm looking at Alan Scott like what the fuck? So I mean, I went in, you know, it was a variant cover. I could have gotten the generic one that everybody picked up, but I was like, well, let me get this. And Jeff Johns is writing it. You know, they're supposed to be turning a new leaf on DC, but it's hard when, you know, you got Jeff Johns, who's probably the best writer that they have right now, and you have him. Besides him, you could probably add another 5 or 10 writers, you know, out of everything that's out, all the projects, you know, whether they're, you know, maxi series, limited series, you know, which they have plenty of those going on right now, and then or they have like the regular monthly titles. They you could probably say they probably got about 5 to 10 good writers. Everybody else is garbage, and so you got Jeff Johns coming back writing an actual series instead of him doing you know, just limited series or anything like that. So he's coming back, but then the problem is the art. So it's like DC, they ran off all their best artists, and they have some that could still draw, but they're not as good as artists from 40, 50 years ago. Like George Perez back in the early 80s is better than the artists right now in 2023. You would think that the art would progress or get better, or somebody would have taken what with George Perez and a lot of other artists like him, Neil Adams, and you know, would have taken what they've done and hopefully taken to another level or try to shine on it. And it just seems like they got worse.
I can definitely say this. It seems like there's a lot of emphasis put on like good cover art for a lot of books, and then you open it up and it's like generic Berkeley, California
Right.
art school stuff. Like
Right.
it's a lot of pastels, and there's a lot of panels that are wasted where they're just talking about food or walking around. It's not like actually, I'm not sure I'm reading a comic book. I feel like I'm reading in like a 80s, 90s indie comic book, not like something that's mainstream superhero stuff. I haven't caught up. A lot of folks have recommended, like there's a new run right now with World's Finest. I think Mark Waid understands Superman, and he's doing a pretty good job with World's Finest. And the guy that's on Flash, I have it written down. I have it in front of me. I think his last name's Adams, and
Right.
everybody's really saying some of that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard the Flash has been pretty good, you know, for the last few months to a
Okay.
year.
Well, so I've tried to read the new Batman, and
You
it
know,
was good for
Batman.
it was good for a couple issues,
Right.
and then the finale didn't make any sense. Like the finale, it was like, you know how it is. They write 5 and 6 issue story arcs because they want to make
Right.
it
And then
into a graphic novel.
you're right. And then
And
when they were trying to wrap up the end of the story arc, it didn't land well with you.
it can't stick the landing. Like they just come up with something stupid. They do something like he's in space, he'd be frozen to death. They didn't do something cool with the suit, and then they just like have him randomly talking about the suit, and you're like, but it's just the same freaking suit. If the suit was torn up in battle like 2 issues ago, dude, it's the same freaking suit. Like you don't get to say it's some special armor. Why didn't you just get him into a suit when he was in the freaking satellite? Like I don't. They just do stupid things, and I think you're right that DC. There's a lot of folks at DC, I think, that don't want to be on the chopping block whenever Zaslav pays attention to them. But it's still a lot of hit and miss because the editors are so bad, or the lack of thereof. So,
right. I mean, yeah,
you and I would have sent this back going, listen, Batman couldn't live through that. That doesn't jive, you know. And I can't give it a pass because this is one of my big complaints with Riri Williams in the freaking Wakanda movie, where she flies into space. She has no freaking helmet on. She should be dead in 10 minutes because there's nothing covering her freaking face. It's like, it's so stupid that, you know, you gotta be intellectually honest, man. I can't just like, oh, I like Batman, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm like, no, it's a freaking problem. He's a freaking human. He can't get a free pass. This is just dumb. So,
yeah, right.